Hello everyone, this is Rachel Cabrales, and in this video we will be creating a virtual drum kit with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. We'll also be diving into some concepts like advanced JS features, modern JS features, and also DOM manipulation, which is document object model manipulation, wherein we just change some things in our HTML using JavaScript. And we'll be going through all of those in this video today, and don't worry, I'll be explaining everything to you. So let's get started. Alright, so this is what we'll be creating. This is the virtual drum kit that we'll make with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So as you can see here, we have our drum kit right here, and it has a couple of keys, and this is corresponding to our keyboard keys. And let's try use your computer keyboard to play the drums. So let's go and try, let's E. There we go, and it also highlights the key that you press, as well as down here. And as you can see, this symbol right here, it suddenly moves a little bit. That's the animation that we're also going to be adding, as well as for R, I, and K. There is a little animation right there. So let's try V, B, E, K, F, A. There we go. So that's our virtual drum kit, and let's get started. Okay, first, let's go to our desktop, and let's right-click to create a new folder. Click New and Folder. And for this one, we'll be creating, let's just name it Virtual Drum Kit. There we go. And we will be opening this folder in Visual Studio Code. And if you don't have Visual Studio Code on your machines, you can pause this video and go to the link below, which is a download link for VS Code, so you can go along with this video right here. Okay, so I have VS Code right here. And let's open that up right here. And let's go to File and Open Folder. And let's go to the folder that we created, which is the desktop, and that would be the virtual drum kit. So let's select folder, and that should be opening up here in our Visual Studio Code. In here, we will be creating our virtual drum kit with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Let's create a new file by clicking this icon right here, or even just right-clicking in the blank space and clicking New File. And let's type in drums.html, and this will be our HTML file. So before we start, what is HTML? So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and this provides the structure of our web page. So it's like what comes first, what comes next, what's beside each other, and all those good stuff. So first, let's type in HTML 5, and this would create the boilerplate for our HTML. So these are the standard things that you put when you're starting out a web page. Title is the name of the web page that shows up in the tab browser. I'm going to show that later to you. So for now, let's change this to virtual drum kit let's write virtual drum kit OCC virtual drum. Okay, there we go. And after that, we're closing off the head tag. So after the head, we have our body. So for our head, it's all the information about our HTML document. But for the body, this is like the content of our HTML. These are the things that the user sees, everything inside the web page we put in the body. So we start the body by creating an H1 tag. So H1 is heading 1 in HTML. We have heading 2, heading 3, up to H5. So heading 1 would be the biggest, and H1 is the biggest, H5 would be the smallest. So let's just put in the title, Virtual Drum Kit. And we're going to give this H1 element a class, okay? So what are classes? So these are attributes we can give to elements to like name them or put them in a classification. So we can give an element multiple classes, and a class can be given to multiple elements. So for this one, let's just name it main title right here. All right. And after that main title, let's go ahead and add in a div element right here below that. So we're still inside the body. And the div actually stands for division. I like to think of divs as like containers that we're putting inside our HTML. So we can have a container after a container, and there are things inside those containers, and we can also have containers inside containers. So those are what divs do. All right, so let's give a class to this div, much like what we did with the H1, and we're going to give it the class of drum kit wrapper. Okay, because this container right here will be the wrapper of our whole drum kit. It will contain the whole drum kit that we have. And next, we're just going to put in some images right here. So first, let me copy this one and paste it right here. This will also be provided in the link below. This images right here that you can copy paste. It will be images that you can access in the description below. And here we're just adding an image, which is we got this image from this source. Let's just press Alt Z to enable the word wrapping so it doesn't go off the page. And this image is given an ID of crash ride. So IDs are actually much like classes, but the difference is IDs are unique, and an element can only have one ID, and an ID can only have like one element assigned to that ID. Okay, and after this image, let's add in another image, and this would be for the hi-hat. Okay, there we go. Let me just indent that again. That's for good practice, for code readability, and so it looks neater. And this pretty much has the same attributes as our previous image. We just changed the ID, of course, and the source of where it comes from. It's a hi-hat now, and also the alternative text, we're changing that too. All right. For now, I want to see what we have so far. So let's go to extensions right here, and let's search up live server. So this is an extension for VS Code that I recommend because this allows us to see what we're doing. Okay, so this one, I already have it installed, but as for you, if you don't have it, install it. And this is like a live reload feature that wherein it allows us to have a live preview of our code. Because I have it already installed, and if you already do have it installed, let's go ahead and in the bottom right corner of our VS Code, let's click Go Live. Make sure you're in your HTML document, and this should start up a browser. Okay, here we go. This is the virtual drum kit in our browser open. I'm sorry. So as you can see here, we have our title. This is actually the H1 that we created, and this is the images that we put in our code. This will also reload every time we make any changes to our code, so we don't have to refresh it or close it and open it again. So that's the good thing with a live server. And in here, I also set my file to autosave so that I don't have to click Control S every time. It just saves any changes that I make. After those images, we're going to get into some keys that we're going to be adding. So let me put in a div right here. And just like I said, we can have containers inside containers or divs inside divs. And for this one, we're going to add in KBD. KBD. And this stands for keyboard input. And for this keyboard input, let's start with J first. Okay. And this is, we're getting the user input or the keyboard input of the user with this tag right here. So we're looking for the letter J right there. And this div, we're going to add some attributes to this div. So first, let's add a class. And this class would be of key. And we're also going to be giving it an ID of snare. And another attribute that we're going to be adding to this div right here is the data key. Data key. Okay. And this data key attribute is actually additional data that we're giving to this element so that we can access it later in our JavaScript and act according to what the data key is. So for this one, we're going to be giving it the data key of 74. Okay, so why 74? This is what we call key codes. So each key in your keyboard actually has a key code or a number corresponding to that. So let's look for 74. And as you can see here, the key code for J is actually 74. And for other letters too, we're going to be using other key codes. Now that this is one key we have, so let me just copy this and paste it down here and change a few things, just like this keyboard. Now, this keyboard input will now be for the letter B. And it's also going to have the same class of key, but we're going to change the ID to kick. And the data key for B is actually 66, so let's also change that. Next, I'm going to select these two and click or tap or press Shift Alt down arrow key to simply copy and paste it down without having to Control C, Control V, and it's just faster to do that. And let's change this to V, and the ID for the letter V would be kick 2, and the data key for that would be 86. Okay, and next let's have the letter H, and same class, and the ID would be Tom, hi, and then for the data key of H, it would be 72. Let's add in a few more keys. So let me just select this again and Shift Alt down arrow key to quickly copy that down. And after H, let's have G. And that would have the ID of Tom mid. And the data key for that would be 71. Next, let's have F. And the ID for F would be Tom low. We have mid, high, and low. And the data key for letter F is 70. All right. And then let's have another key, which is E. And for this key, let's have it be the crash. And the data key for the letter E is 69. And next, we have R. And this R would be for the ride. And the data key for R is 82. So let me just copy two more of these. And that would be the letter I for the hi-hat, open. Okay, and for the data key of I, that would be 73. And finally, let's have the letter K, and that would be for our hi-hat, close. And the data key for K is 75. All right, we completed those keys right there. After those, we're going to add in another image. And let me just copy this right here and paste it right here. And this image would be for the rest of the drum kit. We're going to be adding a couple more things. Let's just check our virtual drum kit for now. And as you can see here, we have our image for the rest of the drums. Okay, after that image, we're gonna put in some instructions for the user, like so to make it more interesting and more user-friendly. So let's put in an H2, and if you can remember, this means heading 2, which is slightly smaller than the heading 1. And inside this, let's type play drums virtually. All right, and after that, we're gonna add in a P tag. So just for your information too, headings and paragraphs and some elements in our HTML are actually block elements. So I'm gonna show you what that means. First, let's write in the P for our paragraph. Use your computer keyboard to play the virtual game. Okay, I can't seem to type computer right. There we go. You can use the following shortcuts. Okay, so we have a heading 1, right, and a paragraph. And when we go in our web page, you can see this is the H2 and this is the paragraph. And as you can see here, they're not next to each other. That's because these elements are actually block elements. They take up an entire block like this, or like this whole block would be taken up by this element right here. So let's create a UL tag or UL element. And UL means unordered list. So these are like bullet points, bullet lists that we see. And inside those, we have LI or the list items. So these are the things in bullets. So first, let's write in crash symbol. And let's add in an inline element. So I told you about block elements, right? For inline elements such as span, it's different from block elements because it stays in line with the rest of its code. So if we say span here would be E. Let's go back. And as you can see here, crash symbol E is still in line with each other. And we're also going to be giving the span class of some, we're going to be giving the span with some classes. And first, let's add the shortcut class so we can style it later on in our CSS. And we're also going to be giving it another class, which is its E code, so that we can refer to it in our JavaScript. So this span right here actually has 2 classes right now, shortcut class and the 6line class. So multiple classes can be denoted by a space in between those classes. So if I want to add another class after the 69, I'll just add a space and then the name of the class that I want to add. Next, we're just going to copy and paste this a couple of times. And I'm going to be changing these to the different parts of our drum kit. So let me just quickly go through that. Okay, so I've already typed it out off screen, and you can also pause this video to just type on your own pace. And as you can see here, I just did the same thing. I just listed some other items in our unordered list with all the different parts of our drum kit right here. And I added in the shortcut classes for each one, and also the corresponding key code for the letter. And let me just see here what is the code for the letter B. I forgot, so this is 66. There we go. All right. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, that's all the things we're going to put inside our drum kit wrapper. So let's go outside of our drum kit wrapper as denoted by this div right here. This is for the drum kit wrapper. Okay, let's go down. And for this one, we're going to be adding the audio elements for each of these keys so that when we press a key, it will play a sound. So first off, let's type in audio, put in an audio tag, and let's press enter. We can also just keep on the same line, but I like to enter or do this on a new line, so just for readability. And we're going to give this audio a data key too, much like what we did with the divs for each keys a while ago. And for this one, we're going to give it the same data key for the same key that it's corresponding to. So for this audio, we want it to correspond to the letter J. And if you see right here, the key code for the letter J is 74. So let's just put 74. And after that, we're also going to copy the source of this audio right here. So let me just copy and paste that. So, okay, so this is also provided by this user right here. So thank you again for that. And we're going to put in a closing tag for this audio. So that's all we need for the audio tag. And we're going to put in some audio keys for each of these keys right here. I mean, some audio elements for each of these keys right here. So let me just do that quickly off screen. Okay, so now I have that right here, and this will also be provided in a gist below, so you can easily copy paste these audio elements into your own HTML code. Okay, so that's all we need for now in our HTML. So we can go ahead and look at our HTML for now, and yeah, it still doesn't look good. That's why we're gonna get into CSS now. So let's go ahead and click our Explorer right here, and let's create a new file, which will be the styles.css. All right. So we also want this styles.css to be linked into our HTML. So let's go ahead and go to our HTML document right here and go up to the head here, back here. And after this meta and before the title or anywhere inside the head, let's put in a link tag so that we can link to this styles that we're putting in for the CSS. And the rel would be a style sheet, because, you know, it's a cascading style sheets for CSS. And href would be what is the name of the file. So that will be styles.css, and let's close that up. Okay, so it also doesn't need a closing tag anymore. And now if we make anything in this CSS, it's going to be reflected in our HTML because it's linked. All right. And just to start things off, I told you earlier that HTML is like the structure of our code or our web page. Meanwhile, CSS right here is the style or how it looks like. So what are the colors? What are the sizes? How big is this? How big is this text? What is the font family of this text? And all those good stuff. It's all in the CSS. And CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. Okay, so first, let's select everything inside our HTML. And how do we do that? So we select everything by typing asterisk, and then just open some curly braces up. So this selects everything inside our HTML code. And in everything, we want to change the font family for everything to be, let's choose one right here. I think Verdana looks nice. There we go. And let's close that off with a semicolon. So let's look at our website or web page. As you can see, the font has changed already into a more modern looking font. I think that looks nicer than the font before. Okay, after that, that's all we're going to change for everything. We now want to select our this title right here because I want it to look bigger and I want it to be red. Okay, so let's go ahead to our HTML. What did we put in as the class for that? And that would be the main title. Okay, so let's select the class by denoting it with a period. Okay, so we select classes in CSS with a period. And then the name of the class that we are selecting. In this case, that would be the main title. So first off, I want it to be in the middle of the page. I don't want it into the left like that. So let's text align. Let's change its alignment to center and semicolon. And as you can see, it's now in the center. Next is we're going to be changing the font size of this main title to 50 pixels. And pixels is px because I want it to look a little bit bigger. There we go. And I also told you that I want the color to be red. So let's put in the color as red. All right, that's great. But I think that's a little too bright for me. So let me just select this color picker right here. This is also a great feature of VS Code and CSS. You can select like from the color picker already the certain color that you want. All right, I want it to build a little bit brighter. Okay. All right, that's good enough for me. Okay, that's all I want to change for our main title. Let's go ahead and edit our drum kit wrapper or the whole div that wraps the whole drum kit. So it's a class, so that we're putting in a period 2 before that. And we want to change the position of this to relative. It means that if we're changing its position, it will be relative to the original place it was in the document. And we want to change the width of our drum kit wrapper to around 600 pixels. So it's really big. And we also want to add a margin, okay, of -100 pixels, auto, and 0. So that's all we need to change for our drum kit wrapper. We now want to make these images right here at the top that is floating to be more in line with the rest of our content. So let's select this. What is this image? Oh, this is the crash ride, and this is the hi-hat top. So let me just start with the crash ride first, and let's go back to HTML. And as you can see here, this one is the ID, right? We don't have a class to call for these ones. So how do we select IDs in our CSS? That would be with a hashtag, okay? So for classes, that would be a period, and for IDs, that would be a hashtag or a pound. And we type in crash ride or the name of the ID we are selecting. Great. Now let's change this position to be absolute. So for this one, absolute actually means that we're taking it out of the flow of the document, which means, look at that one, it's already above the document. And for this one, we're going to be positioning it 114 pixels away from the top. So it's like the opposite. It's going away from what you set it to. So as you can see here, it went down because it's going 114 pixels away from the top. We also wanted the position to be 80 pixels away from the left. And as you can see, it will also move towards the right like that. And that is where we want to position our crash ride right here. And we also want to put in a transform for this because as you can see right here, it is slanted and I want it to be straight. So let's go ahead and add a transform property, style property, and rotate. And let's rotate it around -7 degrees. Okay, let's see if that looks better. Okay, and we also want to scale it up a bit because it looks a bit small. So let's scale it to 1.5. So this means we're multiplying its original size by 1.5. And as you can see here, it looks bigger. And now we want to add a transition because as you can see earlier when I demoed the final product for this, we had like an animation, right? And this transition that we're adding is that when the animation is performed, it looks a little bit smoother, you know? So let's add a transition to all the transformations that are going to be, or the animations we're going to be doing later on. And we're going to be making the ease in and out a little smoother by 0.0.42 seconds. And now let's go ahead with the hi-hat top. So for the hi-hat top, it's pretty similar. So let me just copy this one and paste it right here. And let's just change a few things. So hi-hat, hi-hat top. There we go. And the position is also absolute. The top would be 166 pixels away from the top. There we go. So it's a little bit lower. And it will be 71 away from the right. Okay, not from the left, but from the right. Because we want it to be here on this side. Let's just wait for that. There we go. And let's just remove the rotate. We don't need to rotate it. We need it to be straight. And the scale would be 1.35. So a little bit smaller than this crash ride right here. All right. And we're going to be keeping the transition because we're also going to be animating it. And for this one, we're going to be adding another property, which is the Z index right there. And we're setting it to 0. So Z index actually is like the order in which it appears. So think of them like layers. So we have layer 0. And then if we put it to layer 1, it will be above the others. Or maybe if we have this as layer Z index 1, this hi-hat top. And we have another element as Z index 2, which means the one with the Z index 1 would be in the lower layer. And then it will be overlapped by the higher number layer. Okay, let's bring it back to 0. Next, we got that. Now we want our drum kit to be a bit bigger. So let's select our drum kit. And so, period, drum kit. All right. And open up some curly braces. And we just want to make it bigger. So let's make the width 100%. There we go. So now it looks bigger. And as you can see, it's already in line with the with our hi-hat top and our crash ride. And let's position it to relative. There we go. Next, we want to position these keys right here because they're just floating in this top left area, and we don't want that. We want them above our drum kit right here to indicate as keys. So let's select the keys, and I believe that's the class keys key. And first, let's set its display to be inline block. Okay? And I told you about block elements earlier and inline elements earlier, right? So this is like a hybrid of those things. With inline block, it's still adapting the inline property, which is it's still in line with other elements. But it's also adapting the property of block, which is we can add margins to it, we can add paddings to it, change its width. Because for inline elements such as span, we can't really add paddings to a span. Next, we're going to be adding a position to it. So we're also going to be changing the position. Absolute. Here we go. And now we're going to add a background to these keys, which is a background color. And I want it to be like a grayish one. So let's just EA. And let's set the font size to be a bit bigger. Font size would be 1.5 EM. Okay, so this 1.5 EM means that we are multiplying its size 1.5 times its original size. That's why it's a bit bigger now. Next, let's add in a height. Height of 32 pixels. And the same for the width. We're also setting it as 32 pixels. So it's a perfect square. There we go. See, it's now a square. Next, we're also going to be aligning the text to the center. So let's add in a text align center. So it's not off to the left, as you can see there. And what we want to add a border to that, and that border would be 3 pixels thick. It will be a solid border. And the color of that border will just be around, let me select this one, and let me choose like a color in our color picker, something darker, like 8080. I like that one. There we go. And close that up. As you can see, there is our key. But I think the edges are a little too sharp. So let's add another style property of border radius. Just want, to make it look like the edges smoother or the corner smoother by 4 pixels. Let's see if it does. As you can see, it's now a little bit smoother. Let's make it 8. There we go. As you can see, it is now not as sharp, right? Maybe 7. Lucky number. There we go. And now, since we want it above this, so if you can remember, this is actually in the Z index 1, and we want it to be above that. So let's add it a Z index to this, and this would be 2, all right? So that it's above these things right here. And finally, let's add in a transition, and let me just copy this transition that we added earlier, because this is pretty much what we want this key to have too. All right, that's what we need to edit for the keys. And as you can see, all the keys are in just one space right here. There's a lot of keys right here. And we want to position them exactly above this or their corresponding drum parts. So let me just position those quickly. So first, we want the kick. We select the kick. Because, we set the IDs earlier, right, for each of these keys. So let's position this kick key. I think that would be... Okay, so we're going to position that about 355 pixels away. 355 pixels away from the top. And from the right, it's going to be 308 pixels away. Okay, let's see how that looks like. Okay, so that's about right, where we need it to be right there. Or I want it right here. Maybe just 250. On the right, there we go, that's correct. Next, we're also going to be adding for the kick 2, or the letter V. Let's just change this one right there, and the same, it's going to be about the same height, but right here. So this one would be 308 pixels. Okay, next is the snare, which is going to be, let's do from the top again. It's going to be 280 pixels away from the top, and from the right, it's going to be 145 pixels away from the right. That should be around here. This one, the snare drum, or the letter J. And next is the tom high. Okay, and that would be 240 pixels away from the top. And from the right, it's going to be 227 pixels away. Great, so it should be right there. Perfect. And next, let's go with the tom mid. Tom mid. And this would be 220 pixels away from 220 pixels from the top. And from the left, it's going to be 222 pixels away. See right here. There we go. And the tom low, just this big drum right here, low. So let's put tom low. And that would be 320 pixels away from the top. And from the left, that's going to be 133 pixels away. There we go. Next are these. We have two other right here, the crash and the ride. So let's just put some things right there. So let's go with the crash. And that would be 80 pixels away from the top. And just 70 pixels away from the left. Okay, that's all we need for the crash. And finally, for the here, would be the ride. And that would be from the top, it would be 87 pixels. And from the left, it's going to be 165 pixels away from the left. Okay, right. So now we're going to change the hi-hat. So let's go ahead and for the hi-hat open, that would be top 144 pixels and right would be 165 pixels. And for the hi-hat close, that would be from the top again, 150 pixels away from the top and 60 pixels away from the right. All right, so we have put the keys in its appropriate places right there. And yeah, that's all we need for these right here. Now, we want to edit these things right here now. So let's go ahead and select the shortcut. And let's change the font weight to be bold. So it's going to be bold, these right here. Second, shortcut. But it's not working. There we go. Now it's bold. Next, let's add a background color. Or just a background of EA, similar to the keys up here. And let's add a padding for these ones. So if you can remember, it's the space between the border and the actual content. So that would just be 5 pixels all around. So top, left, right, bottom, there will be a 5 pixel space for the padding. And let's make the font size a little bit bigger, 1.2 EM. There we go, so that's bigger. And let's also add a border for this one, which is going to be solid black and solid black 1 pixel only. And let's change the border radius to be a little bit smoother. Let's try with 7 pixels. That all right? 7 pixels, I think. Maybe 10 pixels is all good. There we go. That looks better. And as you can see, it's pretty close together. And that's why we're going to change the style of this list items to have a little more spacing between each other. So let's select the list item and let's add a padding of 10 pixels. 10 pixels. Here we go. And it should look a little bit better. Go. That's all good. And after that, we're also going to be styling. I guess that's it. I guess that's all we need to style for this virtual drum kit. And if we maximize this for a few, we're gonna see. Let's try it out. So of course, it's still not gonna work. So I'm pressing E. Still not working. So that's because we haven't added any functionalities to this. We just made it look better. And we're gonna add some functionalities by going into our JavaScript. So let's go to our Explorer right here, and let's create a new file. And let's call this script.js. Okay, and this is the one that will be handling the functionality of our web page. Okay, let's close our Explorer. And first of all, let's go back to our HTML. And we want to add any functionalities to this. We just made it look better. And we're going to add some functionalities by going into our JavaScript. So let's go to our Explorer right here. And let's create a new file. And let's call this script.js. Okay, and this is the one that will be handling the functionality of our web page. Okay, let's close our Explorer. And first of all, let's go back to our HTML, and we want to bind this script to our HTML, because as of now, it's actually an external script and it's still not connected to our HTML. So let's go ahead at the bottom of our body, before we close our body, let's go ahead and add a script tag, and the source would be the file name, which is script.js, and let's just close that off. And we're also going to add a closing tag for this one, script. There we go. All right, so if we now our script will be working with our drums. Before we get into JavaScript, I would like to give you a little bit of an overview of JavaScript. So just like I said, it handles the functionality and the interactivity of our website. And first, we're going to get into DOM manipulation. Okay, so what is DOM manipulation? DOM manipulations, DOM stands for document object model. This just refers to the HTML document right here. So essentially, DOM manipulation means that we are manipulating our HTML through our JavaScript. And there are a lot of factors in document object model, and one of these is accessing certain HTML elements. So how do we do that? So we can get elements by selecting the document, and then we can get elements depending on their ID, class, or their other attributes that an element can have. So for this one, let's just get an element by ID, and then some open and close parentheses, and inside this would be the name of the ID that we're looking for. So I want to access the crash ride, this one. Let's go back up here. That would be this one. I want to access the image because we're going to be animating that, right? So let's go ahead and enter the image right here. And we want to assign this element right here into a variable. And for this one right here, we're actually, we don't want to change it. We just want to, we want this element to stay the same. So let's go ahead and put it in a const variable. And when you're declaring variables, you start with either const or let, and then the name of our variable. And for this one, I'm just going to name it crash ride. And we want to assign this element that we got into this variable. So let's just put an equal sign to assign this one into this variable. So when we call this variable, or when we use this name, it's going to get this element and we can manipulate it. And we're going to get another element. So let me just copy this one down right here. And that would be the hi-hat top. Changing, of course, the variable name to hi-hat top. And then instead of crash ride, we're getting the ID hi-hat top. There we go. And I think that's all the things that we need to get from the document, because those are just the things that we're going to be animating, the crash ride and hi-hat. And now let's go ahead and make those animations. So we have these things in JavaScript we call functions, right? So the functions are actually like blocks of code that can be reused to when we, for example, press a button, or when we open up the page or stuff like that. We can run these functions to make our lives easier so that we don't have to repeat it again and again. And usually when you're writing functions in JavaScript, you start with the function keyword and then the name of the function. So for example, function, my function, and then open and close parentheses, and then some curly braces. So this is the usual format of a function. So let's stick to the proper naming convention, which is a camel case. And we can do functions like this, but in modern JS, there is actually what we call an arrow function. Okay, so arrow functions function like our normal functions right here, but it takes it's shorter to write. So first, let's create a constant variable named animate crash or ride, and this is for animating our crash or ride. And let's put in an arrow function in this variable, and it's like this. Okay, and this parenthesis right here is actually where we put our parameters or arguments. And since we're not really taking in anything for our function, we can keep it blank. And inside this function, we want to style our crash ride. So let's select the crash ride right here. Dot style. We're going to change the style and transform, which is we're going to rotate it 0 degrees. So essentially, we're bringing it back to its original rotation, because if you can remember, our crash ride right here is actually slanted a little bit. So we rotated it to be straight, and now we're putting it back to 0 degrees, so it slants back into its original slanting position or rotated position. And we're going to scale that up to 1.5. So we're going to retain the scale of 1.5 so it stays the same. It doesn't go back smaller. All right, that's what we need to do for animating our crash. And then we're also going to animate our hi-hat. So let's just say animate hi-hat closed. So let's go ahead and put in an arrow function in this one too, similar to this one. And let's just also style our hi-hat top. Style.top would be 1.71 pixels. And then we're also now going to create a function to play the sound when we press a key on our keyboard. So let's start off by creating constant variable again and naming it play sound. And this is also going to be an arrow function. But for this arrow function, we're going to add a parameter. And that parameter we're taking in is E for the event, all right? And the events in JavaScript is when we click a button, when we press a key on our keyboard, when the video or when the window loads, those are all events. And we're taking in that event so that we can identify what key code is entered when we press a key on our keyboard or when the event of key press happens. So let's take in that parameter. And inside this function, let's go ahead and create a constant variable, and this will be our key code. And we will get that key code from the event and the key code. Okay, so we're essentially getting the key code of the key that we pressed on our keyboard. So for example, if we press J, our key code will now be 74, if I'm not mistaken. Let's go back here. 74, right? So our key code will now be 74 for this constant variable. And let's put in a comma, because that means we're also creating another constant variable, and that will be named key element. And this key element is selecting the div that has the same key code. So let's go ahead and select our document again. And instead of using get element ID to select an element from our document, we're using query selector. So query selector is just selecting anything that has the thing that we're looking for. So for this one, we're looking for the div with the same data type data key as the key code. So it would be this JDiv right here. But for this one, we're actually going to be using another concept, and that is, let me just comment it right here, template literals, all right? And that is what we use when we are using variables inside text, okay? And we're going to do that with this query selector because we want to select the div with the same key code. So let's go ahead and put in a backtick, and let's select divs, any divs. We're looking for any div that has the attributes, which is inside the square brackets right here, that has the attributes of data key that is equal to, let me, equal to, then we'll now use our template literal right there. And this would be the key code. Okay, so essentially we're looking for a div with the same data key as the key code that we pressed on our keyboard. This is all this is doing. Next, after that, we're going to check if we do have this key element right here. So if we do have a div that is equal to the key that the user pressed. So let's use a conditional if, and if statements are either true or false. So they're checking any condition inside this parentheses right here if this condition is true or false. So for this one, we're checking if there is not a key element. And one way we do when we check if something is true or false is by just simply typing it in right here. So if there is this is essentially saying that if there is a key element, then we're gonna do something. But for this one, actually, we are checking if there is no key element. So we do that by simply putting in an exclamation point before that. So exclamation point is an operator we use to denote not. Okay, so if there is not a key element, then we're gonna do something, and that something is just, let's just remove this, returning. All right. So return in JavaScript are actually what when we exit out of a function or return a value out from the function. So, all right. So we're returning nothing. That means we don't have to do anything. And if there is a key element, it will skip this if statement right here and go ahead to the next blocks of code, audio element. And this essentially right here is we're getting the corresponding audio element to this certain key code. So we're going to do the same thing, query selector. So document.query selector. And for this one, we're going to select the audio element. We're also going to use backtick. So backtick right there because we're going to use the key code. And let's select the audio, which has the same data key as the key code that we pressed. Okay. And $, open curly braces, and then the key code. All right. So it's good practice to also end your JavaScript with some semicolons just so we can avoid errors. And now that we got that audio element selected, let's go ahead and set the current time for the audio element to be 0, which means that when we play this audio element, it's going to start at the very start of the audio clip. And then we're just simply going to play the audio. That's how simple that is. So we're going to also add another thing right here. So this is another concept in JavaScript. It's called event listeners. So let's go ahead and get the window, which the window refers to the whole web page or the whole window. And we're going to add an event listener. Okay, so event listeners are actually like we're telling JavaScript to, hey, wait for this event to happen or listen for this event to happen. And then when this event happens, do something. So it takes in 2 arguments, which is the event that we are listening for. And for this case, we are listening for a key down event, which is a key press on the keyboard. And once that key down happens, we're going to call the play sound function that we created. Let's try it out. There we go. So now it's working because it's checking for the sounds. Okay, so V, B, H, J, J, G, F. Okay, I and K. There we go. But I also want to add a little bit of flair and a little bit of more animations to this and color in these keys when they are pressed. So, it looks a bit better when you're using it. Let us go to display sound right here and let's select let's create a constant variable named key shortcut. Okay, so this is we're getting the keys that we are seeing so that we, right here, let me just show you. We're selecting these keys right here because we want to color them into as the user plays a sound. So let's select those by using the DOM manipulation document. And for this one, we're going to get the elements by class name. Because let's go back to our HTML. If you can remember, we had two classes for this, which is the key code and the shortcut class. So we're going to get document dot get elements by class name. Okay. And the class name we are actually looking for is the key code. So let's just put in a backtick right here and use template literals to select the key code. All right. So that is the key shortcut. We already got that. So let's go ahead and select our key element first. And we're going to style that with a background color of red. All right, just red. And next, we're also going to get our key shortcut. There we go. And for this one, actually, when we get elements by class name, it actually returns an HTML collection. An HTML collection is actually like an array. So if we simply say key shortcut right here, dot style dot background color, close red 2. So let's put this red 2. It's not going to work because it's reading a whole collection when we only want to select one. So let's try V. It's not working. It's not coloring because it's not reading this collection. So what we want to do right here is actually just select the first one. Because when we go back here, the first one, which is indicated by this index 0, is just the first one we're looking for. We don't have any other elements right here. So let's just select the 0 or the first one from the array. Okay, so let's test this out. If it works, let's press the letter E. There we go. It now changes its color. Now, we want it to go back to its original color. So let's go ahead and set timeout. And this is a function wherein we're setting like, we're setting a timeout for this certain codes to happen after a certain amount of time. Okay, so let's just put in an arrow function inside this. And let's select the key element. Let's just copy these ones and paste it right here because we're changing it back to the gray color it was originally was. I think it's EA, right? And also for this other one, it's going to be EA2. Okay, and that is the first argument for this set timeout. And next is we're going to put in the number of milliseconds we're going to have the this function run. So it will run after 500 milliseconds. That play sound is called. So let's go ahead and test this out if it changes back. Okay, let's press E. There we go. So as you can see, that is half a second. And now, when we go back up here at the top, we created some animations, right? So how do we apply those animations? Because as you can see, it's not yet doing anything. So let's go ahead here and create another conditional statement. And we do this by using a switch, okay? Switch statement. And switch statements are just checking a certain variable right here or value and comparing it to cases. And if it does match a case, then it will do something. And for this switch right here, we want to check the key code. There we go. And we are comparing this key code to a couple of cases. For this one, we want to compare it to case 69. And that would be, so when the user presses the letter E, something will happen. And if you can remember, the E key is actually this crash right here. So we also want to get this R right here. So let's go ahead and choose the case for letter R, which is 82. 82. There we go. And for these cases, we want to call this animate crasher ride function that we created. So let's just put that in here. Animate crasher ride. Don't forget those. Open and close parentheses. And then we're going to break out of this switch statement. Because when we don't put a break, it will continue after this and go ahead and do the next switch statement. So we want to break it right there. And we also want to select for this K key. So let's go ahead and see what K is. That would be 75. So let's say case is 75. Then we will animate the hi-hat closed. All right. So it's pretty much the same thing. We're also going to break right here. All right. So now let's test out this code if it really animates. So let's go to our virtual drum kit and let's press E. There we go. It animates. And also K. Okay, so the hi-hat also closes. The problem that we have now is that it's not going back to its original state. So let's try pressing E again. And let's try K. So it's not going back. So what we want to do is go back to that. There we go. So we're going to go ahead and create another function right here named remove crash ride transition. There we go. And we're going to make it an arrow function. And for this one, we're getting the parameter or the parameter of the event. So let's put an E for the event. We're getting it as the parameter. And we're going to first check if the property of this event right here has a transform. Because if we go back to our CSS, it has a transform property right here in its style. So we're checking if it does have that. So let's check if it doesn't have it. So e.property name dot, okay, is not equals to transform. So this is essentially checking if it doesn't have that property name, and if it doesn't, it will just return. Okay, it will do nothing. But if it does, it will continue on. And what do we want to do if it does have a transform property? So let's go ahead and say e.target.style. Okay, we're getting the style property of this event, which is the crash that we triggered. And we're going to add the transform. We're going to change the transform property back to rotate to its original one. So let's go back here. And as you can see, this is its original transform. So let's just copy this one and paste it right here so it goes back to its original. Because if you can remember, we rotated it to 0 degrees when we transformed right here in line number 5. So we're just essentially bringing it back to its original state. So we're also going to do this function to our hi-hat. Okay, so remove hi-hat top transition equals, we're also getting the event. And we're going to check also if that event has a property name of transform. Because if it doesn't, we're not going to do anything. So if property name equals top, okay, for this one, we're actually going to get the top, not the transform. Because if we're going to go back to our hi-hat, it's going down, right? So it has a top of 166 pixels initially. And when we animated it, we changed it to 171 pixels. So we want it to go back to 166 pixels. Okay, so if it doesn't have that top property, we're just going to do nothing. Because of course, we don't have that top property that we need to change. And if we do, let's target the style of that event, style.top, and we're going to set it to 166 pixels, which is the original size, position it was before animating. Let's go ahead and add some event listeners to these crash ride and hi-hat that we have, these document object model elements that we took. So let's go ahead and select those. So crash ride dot add event listener. Okay, so we're waiting for the transition to end. So the event we're waiting for is transition end. There we go. So when the transition end, it's going to run these functions that we created. So it's going to remove the transition and put it back into its original state. So let me just remove crash ride transition, and don't forget the semicolon. And let me just shift out down arrow key, and we're just going to select that hi-hat now. Hi-hat top. There we go. Transition end. And for this one, it would be the hi-hat top transition. All right. So this should work now. So we actually want to remove this outside of the play sound. So let's just put in another curly brace, closing curly brace right here, and remove this one. Okay, great. So let's just test this out if it does work. So let's go ahead and let's try. There we go. Now it's animating. Okay. I'm not a drummer, so I'm just testing all these keys out, and it looks like that this virtual drum kit is good to go. So you can play with this. You can even make it look better than what we did today here, and you can add more drum parts, maybe more cymbals, or yeah, just do what you want with this virtual drum kit. And I hope that this tutorial equipped you with more knowledge about JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. And I would really like to thank you, and I hope you enjoyed with this tutorial.